Just let him freeze to death outside.
Child, what if we're wrong about him?
Why then we're wrong?
U.S. number 31 calling McMurdo. Come in, over. U.S. number 31 calling McMurdo. Urgent. Come in, over.
Welcome to our part 5 and final video covering John Carpenter's The Thing. This video will be as long as it needs to be, as there's still a lot to cover, and we wanted to be as specific as possible in regards to details, and rather than have a section devoted to the timeline of the film, we are going to incorporate it whenever we know the times of an event in the film. We will note on the bottom of the screen the time and the source of this information, which will be a snapshot of the scene, script, or clock that we get this information from, so you can verify it yourself in the movie. So with that said, we're going to continue. Now that the dog thing has arrived to the base and spread its germs all over Bennings and potentially leads the entire facility into catastrophe, we come to the first deleted scene of the film where Gary inspects Jan's dog tag. But the scene really wasn't necessary, as the sequence with everyone around the table inspecting the body served the information better. An interesting thing about this scene is when Knowles muses that maybe they might be at war with Norway, which, if you think about it, these guys are so far away from everyone that if such a war broke out, how would they know? Thus, this presses the isolation that they suffer out here. After the copter heads out, something is going through each room looking for a target, and the dog finds that target in this room with the shadow. Now, in order to know for sure who this shadow is, that is physically assimilated, there are a few things to consider. Firstly, it can only be Palmer or Norris, as they are the ones that are later seen to be things. It can't be Blair because the mop in that shadow makes Blair envious. The second thing to consider is what the filmmakers originally planned. According to Stuart Cohen, producer of The Thing and the man who got the ball rolling for the project, it was intended to be Palmer. At the time of filming, David Clennan's silhouette was considered too distinct, a dead giveaway. Cinematographer Dean Cundy tried to soften the edges to diffuse the image, but in the end, John used stunt coordinator Dick Warlock to throw off the scent. Dick Warlock was used for quick scenes when they needed to stand in for a performer during a shot where their faces wouldn't be seen. At the Stewart location, Dick played all outdoor Blair scenes because Brimley did not work at the location. He would also play the Palmer monster that was later on the ceiling. He was also one of the Norwegians toasting in the picture, which had other filmmakers in it. When filming the shadow scene, Dean Cundy asked if they should spruce up the hair or something, and Carpenter's response was perfect. No, let's really screw with the audience. Today, the audience is still debating, as a matter of fact, who the image is on the wall, but it's pretty clear from some involved with the film who the shadow is. Palmer. However, I was always on the side that it was Norris for 40 plus years, since I always thought the shadow looked the most like him. But in the end, I won't dismiss what the filmmakers say. I've been to some sites where people try to claim that Cohen's opinions don't matter because the film is ambiguous, and therefore there is no truth. But I don't think myself arrogant enough to dismiss what a person involved with the creation of this movie and all aspects within it, because I want the film to be a certain way. In the end, does it matter? This movie is so perfect in continuity and logic that you can interchange Palmer or Norris as the shadow, and it works with precision. And that's one of the many reasons this film stood the test of time. At the Norwegian base, the ice block was a direct nod to the original Thing from Another World, and there was more deleted footage at the base, which included the body in the closet that we discussed in the earlier script. This scene was cut to better streamline the film. As the first night is ending, a nice touch for the character Windows is you will see he's slacking off on the job sleeping, and when he's woken up, he's holding a magazine called Photoplay, which hints about his character's dreams of Hollywood, while Fuchs is soiling his hands, and the other two are busy autopsying the bodies. So on the first day, according to Cohen, Palmer would be a thing. So why didn't it kill and replace Childs during the night when they are rooming together? I could only devise two reasons why Childs survived. Firstly, he smoked a joint with Palmer, and therefore he would be already infected with germs. Therefore, why should the creature risk exposure and just let the germs take their course on Childs? I think the creature would have laid low if it could have after obtaining a human body. But unfortunately, the dog kennel occurs, and it didn't count on the other dogs of the facility sniffing it out and making a ruckus. Now, just before all hell breaks loose in the dog pen, at 4:30 a.m. on the second day, per the script, there was a deleted scene where Blair talks about cell structure to his assistant. Once again, this dialogue was better explored after autopsying the dog thing. Which brings us to the hardest scene in the movie for me, because I think the dog kennel scene is just brutal. Honestly, I'm a cat guy, but the dog sounds and performances were just so visceral from the animals, and most of it was special effects work. However, there is a moment that gives me some levity, and that was an appearance by none other than Rob Bottin, and that is during this shot. Yes, that's Rob back there working his device. A funny thing about the dog kennel scene was that the sounds of most of these dogs were taken from a neighborhood, where dogs were put in a room and door handles were being wiggled like crazy to cause the dogs to bark and go nuts. Now, the flower projectile that tries to come at Childs was really dog tongues with teeth. Yuck. Now, there are two takes to the fate of the dog thing. In some circles, folks say a piece of it separates from the part on the floor, and it punches through the roof and heads into the ceiling. Others say the dog thing punches into the roof and dangles like the Norris thing later did. They argue that Child's POV is looking up when he torches the creature. His aim seems to be at human height, so this supports that. I can go either way with this theory, because if a piece of the dog thing gets into the roof, it can easily explain how Blair is later infected. And a thing that supports this theory is that at the end of the movie, the Blair thing has a dog thing come out of it, thus suggesting that Blair was assimilated by this dog thing. However, one thing that doesn't support this is that if the creature fled, wouldn't there be a desperate search party made to kill and find this thing? How about you decide on this one? A very ironic, or not so ironic thing is who the first person is running in the kennel with the extinguisher. Well, what do you know? It's Palmer, who we know per the filmmakers is already a thing. And you have to wonder if he's instinctually putting out his buddy thing so it can survive from the flames. Norris follows him as well, though it's hard to know if he's a thing yet. He might just be infected, and he follows Palmer's lead. However, if he is a thing at this point fully, then how appropriate is it that the two possible things are the first ones to put the fire out on another thing that's burning?
Coincidence? I think not!
In the morning, Blair is autopsying the dog thing, and he is quickly coming to the realization that they are in serious trouble. He even cautiously questions Clark, and then MacReady takes Palmer and Norris out to the spaceship, where they discover the truth of what they're actually dealing with. Now, we know Palmer is with them, because John Carpenter stated it was him in the film commentary.
You and Hallahan and Clennon, off you go. I think Clennon's with you.
Now, if we believe the producer of the film, Palmer is a thing at this point. If this is the case, then Norris shouldn't be a thing, because if they were both a thing, would they not just jump MacReady and turn him into one as well? That would be difficult unless they brought extra clothes for MacReady to change into after the assault. However, all three could be things if you want to believe that MacReady was always a thing. But if that was the case, would they really bring back more information about what the thing is? The things would want to stay under the radar, and therefore they could say, we just found an ice block where the creature was dug up, and whatever they used the thermite on was destroyed. The storm is about to hit, and there is no way anyone could verify it until it would be too late. For me personally, I believe MacReady came back very human, but possibly infected. I also believe that Norris was infected virally at this point, and Palmer is a thing, just trying to stay under the radar. I have to say, I love the matte painting by Albert Whitlock. It might look dated to some, but I just love the old style of filmmaking. Now, my favorite track from the film, and the mood-defining moment of the movie for me, is when Wilford Brimley just inspects the computer with such a defeated look on his face. What a delivery, and the music is so very appropriate. So this brings us now to Blair's assimilation. I believe this scene is the last moment you see Blair as a human. So let's go through this. Firstly, Blair has been working non-stop. He's been autopsying Splitface and the dog for over 24 hours now. Now, Stuart Cohen stated in his blog that the filmmakers wanted Blair to change first. And that was one of the reasons Donald Pleasance wasn't cast. Blair needed to disappear in the background and then return at the end of the film, and Pleasance was already too recognizable, and they feared he would be missed too much and be a dead giveaway that Blair was a thing, so they purposely hired Wilford Brimley so he could be unassuming. From a storytelling standpoint, it was our intent that Blair be infected very early on in the proceedings and off-screen. Here, we were attempting to faithfully follow the dramatic line of the Campbell novella. We all liked the idea that his crack-up was a ruse, a clever feint to isolate himself, or itself, from the rest of the group. What this means is that after Blair came to the realization of what he was up against, he was absorbed. He was not sent out into a shack and sentenced to death by the other humans. Instead, the thing destroyed radios and vehicles to trap the crew of Outpost 31, so germs could most likely take their course, or to kill them directly in a more calculated manner. The Blair thing wanted to manipulate the others and close them off while isolating itself early so it could begin construction of its own escape plan, the vehicle at the end of the film. And for those fans who think Blair is the human hero who contained the thing in the Antarctic and saved the world, unfortunately, it's more sinister than that. Because when Cohen was asked directly if Blair was assimilated before the radio room incident, this is what he said with no reservations. Most definitely before. Now consider there's no reason why a thing would sit in front of a computer being disturbed at what it was, and then getting a useless gun to defend itself. Thus, Blair was assaulted physically after this point. That's why I say this is the last scene you see him as a human. However, he was definitely turned before the radio room. This is from the filmmakers, so if you have any angst about it, take it up with them. What this does is help realize the pure evil and malevolent nature of the thing, as it is completely cutting off all hope for the team. And the thing to remember is that Blair is not contained in that little shack. The creature gets out, getting parts to build its ship sneakily. That is a hell of a lot of tools and supplies beneath the shack, and I doubt it was all sitting in there when Blair arrived. So now we get to the Bennings assimilation, which is one of the few moments in the film that makes it clear when someone was changed. Even though I fully believe Bennings was already infected by the virus, he probably got too close, and the survival instincts of Splitface took a hold of him. We all know this creature is taken out pretty quickly, and then all the bodies in the place are burned, while Blair locks himself up in his room but what he's really doing is sabotaging the vehicles. An important moment occurs in this scene, though, and it has to do with another debated topic, and that involves the keys Windows is carrying when he enters the room. The keys Windows is carrying is Gary's master keys for the facility that also access the blood that is later sabotaged. If you listen close, you will hear those keys drop after Windows sees the thing sucking on Bennings. As we end day 2, Blair, or the Blair thing, goes bonkers depending on how you want to interpret it. And this leads the base without vehicles, communication, or hope. And Norris or Palmer are things, depending on what you believe. Bennings is dead, and there's a good chance the majority left are virally infected by the thing. And I suppose this is a good point as any to cover the possibility that MacReady could be a thing as well. Now, we say this to respect those that definitively believe that MacReady is a thing from early on in the movie, and there are a lot of interesting ideas to support this, but there are also some things that ruin this theory, which I will go into later. As I said in part 4, I don't think MacReady got infected by germs in a bottle. If he did get infected, it would be more directly like Blair. This could have happened any time, even during the helicopter to the spaceship, as mentioned. The details of this theory go something like this. MacReady is established early on as a chess player, a tactician if you will, and therefore can think in terms of sacrificing pieces on a board to win a game. They show MacReady pouring alcohol down the computer and destroying it to get the upper hand when things go wrong. This is similar to how it is suggested MacReady infects others while he is a thing with his virus. For instance, when Blair is isolated, you can see MacReady grabbing Blair's bottle and drinking from it, then puts it right in front of him to drink later, suggesting MacReady is infecting him even though Blair is noted to already be a thing. At the end of the movie, he offers Childs a drink, therefore infecting him as well. The conclusion is that the drink MacReady is using throughout the film is a weapon, not only on the computer, but naive humans. So keep this theory in the back of your mind as we continue, because I'll bring up points that help and hurt this theory later. Day 3 starts the morning helping the Blair thing have its own space, and then Doc thinks up the blood test. It's here that Gary gives him the keys to the blood bank, and is there any surprise the blood is sabotaged? The question is, who sabotaged the blood? Well, at this point, it can only be Norris or Palmer. You can even argue that it's Blair who is just locked up in his shack and he's already free. Or all the theorists who are for MacReady being the thing the whole time. I can't fathom how any human would be a culprit, so the truth is, take your pick. But the thing I find most interesting about this scene is when Gary is pressed as to who uses his keys.
Nobody. I just give it to Copper whenever he needs it.
Now, Gary knew Windows had the keys before the doc, and yet Gary acts like he didn't let anyone have them. Gary is obviously fumbling from stress. But notice the change of Windows at that exact moment, because Windows would see this as a bold-faced lie or misdirection to the group from his leader, and this subsequently causes Windows to panic due to paranoia. It's an example of how subtle character motivation can be established in well-written, logical films. And you can see more character moments pulled out by using this scene, like when Clark goes after Childs for causing division. They almost go to blows.
Always up to your belt.
So now that there are trust issues, Gary, Copper, and Clark are tied up, and they are all human, which just shows how perfect the things are at manipulating the group. At the end of day 3, this line is said.
There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. we're gonna find out who's who.
And this leaves us into day 4. And on that day, not a thing happens. Everybody is tied up, and everybody holds up in the rec room. Now, some of the first lines we hear on day 5 establish that nothing happened at all on day 4. They have basically been weathering the storm, and not a lot of people are sleeping.
The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours.
But then the only flaw occurs in this movie, in my opinion. While everyone is in the rec room, Fuchs is alone at his desk, all the way over here in this room, researching. He's an easy target to be assimilated. And where's MacReady? Well, he's all the way over here in this room. Who the hell would go away from the herd in this situation? They're braver than me. Now, despite these two being off alone at this time, this film is extremely believable, as the people in this movie act like real people, trying their best to work with the situation with the best information they have. The reality of this movie is a huge strength, and the methodology displayed by the characters and the creature really sucks you into the psychological tension of this film. If MacReady is a thing, why is he making a tape about its kind to help expose it? Well, it's either a perfect copy, and it doesn't know it's a thing, or it's being tactical. So if someone arrives, he can say, "Look, I was going to tell the world I'm a good guy." Or he's human. Which one is right? Well, you pick. This movie is so effing brilliant. It's rock solid from every avenue. Now, when the power goes out, the person walking by Fuchs is never identified in the movie. I always thought the shadow was Blair because he should be the only thing on the loose unless you believe MacReady's the thing. I say Blair specifically because listen to the music track as the shadow walks by.
Who's that?
Now listen to this track when Blair appears later to kill Gary. What do you know? They're alike. Truthfully, everyone should be in the rec room hunkering down in paranoia. I can't fathom why MacReady and Fuchs are so cavalier to be by themselves. Something is faking being human around them, and it could be anyone. Why be alone at all? Everyone should eat, sleep, smoke, drink, or fart in the same room. And look, there's a restroom right by this room. It's a perfect confined area. And when someone leaves the room, it should be with 2 others to be safe. The original script, where they made rules that no one could be away from the herd for over 20 minutes, was very logical in context to these solo moments. I understand that these scenes are needed for exposition, and I don't hate these scenes. It just takes away from some of the tension when you see these guys alone. On a side note, the folks who think MacReady is always the thing throughout the movie believe the shadow passing by Fuchs is MacReady, because now that Fuchs has told him that everyone should be germaphobes for safety's sake, needs to be silenced. So he leads Fuchs outside, away from the rec room, so no one can hear Fuchs being dealt with. As for who killed Fuchs, we don't know. Again, you can take your pick. But if I was anyone in the rec room who was staying by everyone else, the main suspect would be MacReady or Blair. Was anyone else crazy enough to be walking around alone? Fuchs seeing shredded MacReady clothes means one or two things. MacReady is either a thing, or Fuchs stumbled into items the thing was planning to use to set up MacReady. I think Fuchs found it before the thing could utilize the items for its plan. Nothing more, nothing less. It wouldn't make sense for the thing to have Fuchs find such things and then kill him on purpose. But again, I could be wrong. For those who believe MacReady is the thing, it would work that Fuchs finds his clothes, and that's when MacReady kills him. Then MacReady runs his clothes to his shack, hides them, and then turns on the light to create a ruse to draw them to his shack later. after he assembles the search parties. And an interesting thing is, if MacReady is the thing and he doesn't tell everyone about germs, picking Knowles next is perfect because he makes all their food. Then Knowles would find the shredded clothes, luckily, and get away before MacReady could assimilate him. It's a sound theory. I can't fault it. Now, there's no way to tell who killed Fuchs. Again, pick and it will work. And that's why we're still talking about it 40 plus years later. I love The Hangman's Noose by Blair. It's hilarious. Hey everybody, I'm fine. Let me back inside even though I have a noose next to me. I'm perfectly sane. Really? Clearly, this is the thing manipulating others by saying one thing but showing something else. Now there's a healthy debate as to how these things work. Do they know they are things? Do they know who else is a thing? Do they have a connection with each other? For instance, does Palmer know what Blair is doing and vice versa, like a hive mind? Or are they separate entities? It is stated that the things are such perfect copies that they have inherited human paranoia and therefore can't trust each other as well. I can't say if any of this is true or not, because even the actors debated this constantly with no conclusions. In this movie, we see things turn on things or use other things as distractions, like when Palmer calls out the spider thing. No thing ever comes to the aid of another, whether it's Palmer helping the dog thing or the Norris thing. Blair didn't aid Palmer either, and if MacReady is the thing, well, that would fit, considering such facts. I always imagined the thing like the most selfish and careless entity alive, only concerned with its own survival, and everything around it was a threat, and therefore just kills everything instinctually, even other things. But if you know this channel, you know we like diversity of thought here, so often I'll watch the film with completely different views from time to time. One thing to also consider, if these things are perfect copies right down to the brain patterns, could the things have the traits of the beings they inhabit? The dog thing was threatened, and what do dogs do if they can't run? Well, they attack, like the dog thing did. Palmer went with the flow as a human and thing, and the creature even smoked pot just like the human. When Knowles accuses MacReady of being a thing, Norris is either really feeling concern or he's acting wonderfully. Blair is the anomaly, though. He went from concern for the world to planning on its destruction, so one must draw their own conclusions. Whatever you think, the Norris thing is pretty shocking, gross, and great. I love when Palmer does his line, but is he betraying its own kind? Maybe, but he doesn't say anything until after Windows is staring at it too, so ponder that. Besides Knowles, Clark was one of my favorite characters in the film, so when he died I was a bit bummed. But I guess it's better he died this way than freeze to death or turn into a thing, so I guess he got off easy. Richard Masur had this to say about his death.
I'm going to answer the question once and for all. Clark is the thing. Because what they never tell you in the film, it's kind of a cheat, is that the entity has the ability to hide in a dead body for an infinite period of time. So when Clark is shot, he withdraws himself from the blood test. So are you actually buying any of this?
If you've heard some of the theories, that sounds just crackpot.
It could work.
Yeah.
It could work. But it's not, John wasn't clever enough to come up with it.
The blood test is the only scene with the spark of light in the eyes done on purpose, and it is an awesome sequence. For the ones that are for MacReady being a thing throughout the film, they say this whole blood test was rigged. They state multiple reasons how MacReady could fake his own blood test off-screen, which is fine, but the film shows us everything opposite of that. Logically, there is no way everyone would not be watching everyone suspiciously. The scrutiny of every moment or movement in that room would be deeper than any debate we film fans have. Just put yourself in that situation. In order to buy that the blood test was cheated, you have to ignore any sincerity the filmmakers had. And I have to say, John Carpenter is no Rian Johnson looking to subvert you. He doesn't just make movies to pull a fast one. Also, if you respect Dean Cundy's intentions, then everyone but Palmer was clearly a human, because he purposefully lit the scene with only Palmer singled out to be the thing. Regardless, when you see MacReady testing Palmer's blood, you can notice that the hand holding the dish is a fake one. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Sorry. Another thing is that no one is wearing gloves to protect themselves, which is a good case that MacReady didn't warn anyone about germs. Obviously, as nervous and frightened as this character was, he would have instantly obeyed any germ warning for fear of death. I do have one question about Palmer's blood. Did it run to Palmer, or did it run somewhere and hide? Because if it ran, this blood could survive at the end of the film somewhere. It's possible. Just saying. When Windows is attacked by the Palmer thing, notice his hands are being consumed by the creature the same time his head is. That's just gross. The funny thing is, if MacReady is the thing, he tests the weakest human, then 2 dead ones, and then another thing. And conveniently, MacReady's flamethrower doesn't work and allows the other thing to kill Windows. That seems pretty suspect and works for the theory, but it can easily be debated that it was just a horror movie moment. Guess what I'm going to say now? Yeah, that's right. You have to decide. I am always struck by the performances in this film. When Windows is thrown and the others are full of panic, focus on T.K. Carter. You can actually see Null sympathetic and almost tearful of the situation, making him all the more reason he's a very relatable character for many, like myself. This moment during the blood test really damages MacReady being a thing. Despite all the little things debated, the big problem of this moment is when a thing is killing Windows. If MacReady is the thing, every human is currently tied up on the couch. Windows is now being turned into a thing. Blair is a thing. If MacReady is a thing, they are all in control right now. Every human is a docile target. MacReady's won. Yet instead, MacReady burns both Windows and Palmer, and then tests and frees the humans to continue the game. That does not correlate. The only thing that does correlate if MacReady is a thing is that the creature has no loyalty towards any other. I like this idea because this makes the species way more dangerous and violent. But in the end, a house divided against itself always falls, which could be the case at the end of this movie. So now we come to the tracking shot in the base, eerily similar to when the dog was searching for a target, but this time the thing theme is prevalent. There are theories out there about the clothes and shoes rearranged, but this could be a bad continuity error, or most likely, a struggle, and the aftermath was cleaned up. Another clue is the door. Here we have a before and after picture of the room Childs is in. Notice this door is now open. It is debated that Childs looked sleepy, and MacReady snuck up on him and surprised him in this shot. Then MacReady takes the others, and this scene might suggest that Childs dozed off at his position. Could Childs have been approached from behind after nodding off? Maybe, but he could have been easily awake too in such a case. We have seen that Blair later kills Gary without leaving a bloody mess, so the same could have been done with Childs. There is talk about the color of Childs' coat later in the film, changing from the blue one you see, but more common versions of the film have corrected that, and this is what Stuart Cohen said about this. I think it's the same coat, but I don't believe there was anything specifically planned by John to indicate identity at the end. The scene was reworked so many different times in editing in order to save it from being entirely cut that anything that arises was probably accidental. So if you respect the filmmakers and don't dismiss their thoughts, The coat was not the focus. Moving on. So why then would Childs leave a secure position that is defendable unless he was crazy, which Childs could be? But think about the logic here. Childs walks out, and within 16 seconds the power goes out. So Blair was clearly downstairs with the generator at that moment. Childs did not see Blair outside unless it can teleport, which it didn't. Now, if you believe that Blair assimilated Childs, this works. Blair shows up while the others are finding his ship, assimilates Childs, deals with the generator, while the new Childs comes to and heads outside. Why would a new thing head outside? Well, it makes sense. If Blair doesn't survive, it can freeze, or at least survive a final assault. It's plausible, more plausible than Childs walking out into a deadly storm, chasing a shadow that he's not sure about, which that very shadow could sneak up from any direction. In realistic terms, if he was human, his actions would make no sense. So I find it hard to accept that he is human at the end of the film. So our three remaining heroes decide to go for all or nothing and start blasting everything. The effect of Knowles throwing dynamite into rooms was done by him throwing a fake stick into a room, and then a type of cannon fired to simulate an explosion as he walked on. T.K. Carter stated he could feel the heat, and if he didn't move quickly, he would have been barbecue. While filming the scene where Brimley was killing Moffat, he was so menacing, and John Carpenter was impressed by his delivery. He asked Wilford Brimley what he was thinking as they did the take, and Wilford's response was simple: "Picking up my laundry." Knowles' death was actually storyboarded, and as you can see here, he would first see Gary's feet, and the thing would then ambush him. At the end of the film, the Blair thing is just huge, and you have to wonder, how the hell could he have obtained so much mass? Perhaps the Blair thing includes the mass of Knowles, Gary, and possibly the dog thing from the beginning. After blowing up the thing, MacReady somehow survives this awesome explosion. Yet what we see instead is MacReady surviving, and he comes out with a blanket and a bottle of J&B that he scrounged up. Theorists state that the bottle Kurt holds is actually a Molotov cocktail without the cloth in it, and then he gives it to Childs to drink, and when Childs doesn't react to the liquid, MacReady chuckles, knowing he's a thing. But this is nothing but conjecture, and if you believe this theory, you have to believe that Childs isn't a perfect imitation with no working taste buds. So I always believed MacReady was going to have a victory drink before freezing to death. But once again, I think we need to take into account the filmmaker's focus on liquor bottles throughout the film. From beginning to end, there are bottles center screen, like they are actors themselves, and it was done for a reason. Question is, for what reason? And I'll tell you, it's not for product placement, because John Carpenter isn't a commercial director or a sellout. He's an independent director. I'm sure he got money for product placement in this movie, but that wasn't the main motivation for how he shoots his film. So now we're up to the last question. Is it Childs or MacReady? Are there two things, no things, or a human and a thing? So what do the filmmakers say? Well, on November 23rd, 2012, John Carpenter stated that one of the characters at the end of the film was a thing. Yes, one of them was a thing. Other times, Carpenter stated he doesn't care, and he's even said, I don't know, MacReady was the thing. I'm just bullshitting about MacReady being a thing. At the end, I have no idea. Nobody does. The two actors were told to do the scene in countless ways, and Keith David said he was told to act as a thing and as a human. There were many discussions about this scene, and in the end, even Russell had a hand in some of the dialogue. It was he who wrote the final line of the movie.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
It is also public record that screenwriter Bill Lancaster stated that both men were human at the end. Producer Stuart Cohen also shares this view. Keith David says he's not the thing, while Kurt Russell has wondered if John intended him to be the thing. So honestly, the filmmakers don't help anyone with conclusions. So we have established the bottle, the coat, the breath, and the gleam in the eye are not definitive tells for this scene. If Childs was a thing, and MacReady was human, would it not just torch him and be the last one standing? Also, if Childs is human, he is very reactionary, and, as established in the film, morally ambiguous in a life or death situation.
Childs! What if we wrong about him?
Why then we're wrong?
So it equally stands to reason that a human Childs might do the same, rather than risk the danger. On the same note, if Childs was a thing, would it risk contact with a human who is freezing, who may have a stick of dynamite or fire-based weapons that could kill it? Would a Childs thing just not find a spot out of sight and freeze to death, to be found by rescuers whenever they would arrive? The theory that Childs drinking from a bottle exposes him as a thing also doesn't work completely, because if MacReady was a thing, who's to say anyone at the base was told about the germs? Because that conversation would have died with Fuchs if MacReady was a thing then. So he could be human and unwittingly drink from the bottle if that's the case. It really proves nothing. However, if MacReady is human and gives him the bottle and he's warned everybody about germs, then it would be relevant. The point is, we just don't know. There's a good chance both men are human at the end, victorious heroes who save the world, but both men's answers are suspect. When asked where Childs was, he said he thought he saw Blair seconds after the generator goes out. And when MacReady is asked if he killed the thing, he deflects the question, as if some thing might still be alive.
Did you kill it? Where were you, Childs?
There was also a third alternate ending, and that was to have MacReady in McMurdo, shivering with his blanket, awaiting a blood test. There would be no Childs, and the film would end right there. It was filmed in Rob Bottin's effects building, after the Stewart, British Columbia location, and pretty much discarded for the ambiguous ending. There are few films out there that break the mold, and The Thing is one of them. Most ambiguous moments in movies are due to lazy writing, but this film's ambiguities are so logical, so thought out, that most theories can be healthily debated ad nauseum. Another thing that broke the mold was the standard of don't show too much violence or effects. And this film throws it in your face. Even the goo dripping behind the Norris thing in the wall. It's positively inspired execution and a faithful tale that honors the original story that came out over 80 years ago. It's a masterpiece, and it is in my top 5 horror movies of all time. After the release and inevitable box office failure, the studio started the VHS rollout, and this time there was a lot more promotional material for the film than when it was in theaters. With this new awareness, audiences began renting the movie, and suddenly, with the advent of having distance from E.T., audiences looked at the film differently, and masses began revering the film with a strong following. This would compound over the years, and today, it's one of the most debated movies out there because of its genius style. And I wanted to take a moment to single out one of those channels, which is called Dalwhinnie. When I was doing research, going over everything on the internet about The Thing, I found this channel and I found it quite informative. Check it out if you're a fan of the movie. They have interviews and breakdowns of the film. The Thing would eventually continue in the form of a comic, which John Carpenter blessed as canon during 1991 and 1992. MacReady and Childs would be rescued just in time, but there was a thing still alive, and in the end, Childs would die to kill the creature, and MacReady would end up stuck in the middle of nowhere to freeze and die. It was a fun read, and The Thing would continue in August 2002 in the form of a PlayStation 2 Xbox game called The Thing. This game completely ignored the comics and shows Childs frozen to death when a rescue team arrives at Outpost 31. The game has some canon-changing things by saying things can copy clothes too, and has MacReady returning in a helicopter to save the player in a final boss fight. It's a tense and fun game. I loved playing it. If I ever get enough money, I want to get it again. This one is a game I could play over and over again without end, just like my Resident Evil games. The problem with these two products is that they contradict each other, and therefore the acceptance of one or the other as canon has caused a split in opinions. Some die-hard folks cite that these are relevant to the film's ending, and others shun such thoughts. As for me, I like to explore the films with differing perspectives if possible when viewing them, to find depth, no matter what canon you subscribe to. So I'm not butthurt with either take. After the game came out, Carpenter had an interview in Empire magazine during 2004. He said there was a Thing 2 idea, which picked up right after the first Thing, where both Childs and Mac both survived, with frostbite damage to disguise their age, and they would struggle to survive until a rescue team arrived. He also would go on to state that the 2002 game was currently the continuation of canon, in which Russell survived and Childs froze to death, thus changing his tune about the comics. Shortly after this interview, in 2005, the Sci-Fi Channel announced they were making a direct sequel to The Thing in the form of a miniseries, helmed by producer Frank Darabont and written by David Leslie Johnson. The series would take place in 2005, and Russians would find Outpost 31, where MacReady and Childs are frozen. They salvage the alien spacecraft and find a piece of the Thing on board, and things run afoul quickly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view, this miniseries did not come to fruition. The 2011 The Thing prequel did try to honor the 1982 film, and I greatly appreciate their efforts with that move. I thought the idea about metal fillings and earrings was quite intelligent, and many cite that Childs wasn't a thing because of that addition to canon. They tried very hard to connect the dots methodically to the 1982 film, and the effects were looking pretty good, but then they used CGI to gloss over all the hard work ADI did, and the film was diminished quite a bit because of that. There is a lot more to say about this one, and maybe I will cover it someday, but not anytime soon. Give your thoughts in the comments below how you feel about us tackling it. I might put it on my to-do list. The bottom line with the prequel is that it had to live up to the 1982 The Thing. Therefore, it couldn't stand up against such expectations, and truthfully, the characters in that movie are very stereotyped, and they are not as believable and interesting as what was in Carpenter's film. When the remake was announced, some of the cast were not receptive to it. Thomas G. Waits was mad and stated his view towards the remake was, "How dare they?" There are other things I haven't discussed about the 1982 Thing, like the chessboard having strange continuity moves early in the film, or the board game of The Thing, and so on. At some point, I had to cut back as there just was too much to cover with this one, like Superman. It's a contained story in a contained environment, locked in 1982, but regardless of being dated, it is now timeless, as if it had happened long ago, far away. And it's just as real for viewers today as it was when it came out. When I saw the film in 1984, it was amazing. And as a boy, there were no horror films beyond Alien that scared me. When I saw The Thing, the psychological aspects are really what sucked me into the movie. And it actually made me jump. It was also the movie that made me want to learn about John Carpenter as a 12-year-old boy. Whenever a movie came out of his from then on, I always tried to see it in theaters if I could afford it, just like Steven Spielberg films. I didn't make it to see all of his movies, and I always wished I had seen They Live in the Theaters, which is one I missed. And we will cover that one someday on this channel. And that'll end this series for The Thing. Next up will be Tron Legacy, and we're going to have an old friend return to the channel to help us cover it. I know our journey through The Thing has been a little dark at times, but I want to leave it on a very positive note. I want you to go back in time and remember what stars used to be like. And for that, I offer Wilford Brimley.
I owe you, the audience, a great debt, and I'd like to take this opportunity to humbly express my love for you and my gratitude to you. You've allowed me to make a living. I always thought it was stealing. But here we go, and I mean, I love you, Pete.
If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Super thanks helps. So does sharing.